If you want to learn how to play Mythwind, this is the place to start. In this video, we're going to learn the core rules of this game using the updated rule set version 1.1. So with that said, let's get this one to the table so you can start adventuring and of course start constructing your ultimate town. In Mythwind, each character has a unique role and a unique set of rules that apply to them. Since you won't need to learn all of the rules for each character to start playing this game, this series is divided up into the starting video covering the rules from the town charter, and that's right here, that all players must follow, and then into separate videos covering the unique rules of each character. So all players start here and then they can jump into the video for the character they want to play. When you or others in your gaming group are ready to learn another character, then watch that video at that time. You'll find links in the description for each character video. Like I said, this video also covers the latest update of the rules from the time of this recording, which is version 1.1. And just to let you know, these rules can replace any previous rule set for the game. Also, I want to give a special shout out to OpenOwl Studios for sponsoring this video and providing a review copy of the game. Their support and your support is much appreciated and helps keep the channel going. Mythwind is a cooperative game for 1 to 4 players, or 1 to 5 if you add the Expanded Horizons expansion. In this game, you and your gaming group take on unique roles and work together season after season and game session after session to adventure, hone your trade, earn coins, accumulate resources to keep improving your flourishing town for the sprites and villagers of Mythwind Valley. But here's the twist. There's no winner, no defined endpoint. This is a sandboxy type of board game where the journey of adventuring and building your ever-improving town is your goal. Players can determine their own endpoint, maybe after a set number of seasons or when a certain goal is reached, or they can continue to build and explore as long as they want to. Since this game is played over sessions, players save their game progress from one session to the next, basically by stacking the main board and components and then covering each character's tray and putting them back in the box. Setup is then fairly quick and easy for the next session. To set this one up, lay out the 3 pieces of the town board, with this board showing the tower icon in the center, the board with the resource tracker on the left, and the board with this area called the construction queue on the right. Find the 2 season tiles that look like these and place the one with the spring and summer icons, spring side up in this space in the upper left corner of the board. Then place the other season tile with fall and winter icons next to the board. Place the 4 resource tokens, income, production, food, and culture, on the one space of their matching tracks. I'm using the upgraded markers for this, but the standard ones work fine as well. Find your 12 numbered forest cards. Place numbers 1 through 6 in their corresponding spaces on the board like this. Leave location 7 open, as that's going to be reserved for a building called the Longhouse, so no forest card there. Then place cards 8 through 13 in their corresponding spaces. Find these town action tiles and place them in spaces on the town board with matching icons here, 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 and here. Find your stack of building cards and locate the Longhouse. Place it face up in location 7. The rest of these building cards get placed next to the board, and these don't need to be shuffled as players can openly look through these throughout the game. Take a blue sprite die and an orange villager die, so one of each, roll them and place them in this tower space. If a blank side appears, re-roll the die until you get a result other than 0 and place them in the space by the tower. Now it's time to set up the component and card tray. Find your event cards, adventure cards, and goal cards. From your event cards, find card number 1 and place it in the center left section of the tray. From your adventure cards, find the cards numbered 1 through 10, shuffle them and place them in the center right section of the tray with this adventure cover card on top. Find goal cards 1 through 7, shuffle those and place them to the left of the adventure cards. Find and shuffle your weather cards and place them face down to the left of the goal cards. You can place the rest of your event, adventure, and goal cards somewhere off to the side of the table. You'll just want to make sure that they're nearby because you'll occasionally need to retrieve cards when directed. Place the coins, 1s, 5s, and 10s, in the bottom 3 compartments of the tray. And I'm using the upgraded coins for this video, but the coins that come with the base game look like this and can be used just as well. Place the 5 goal markers here, and place the remaining worker dice up at the top in this supply area. Find this locked-unlocked divider and place it with the locked side facing your dice. This makes up your supply. Now that the tray is set up, you can place this next to the board. Some of the things left in the box will be things like cards that get used by specific characters, and these envelopes labeled 1 through 4. But these are secrets that you won't need to start the game with, but you'll be directed later in the game to get these and open them. So make sure to leave these in the box for now. Each player then selects the character they want to play at the start of the game and takes their character tray, journal, components, and index card and sets up the character following the instructions as we outline in each of the separate character videos. Watch the one for your characters you will be using, and when you're ready to dive into some of the other characters, watch those videos at that time. Now, if you're having trouble deciding which character to play, here's a quick overview introducing the characters from least complex to more complex. The farmer plants, grows, and harvests crops to sell for a profit to the sprites and villagers of Mythwind Valley. The farmer also manages livestock and purchases equipment to make sure they have what it takes to run the most efficient and profitable farm possible. The crafter gathers materials, refines those materials, and builds items for the townsfolk. Their goal is to increase their reputation and sell their items for more and more profit while continuing to improve the efficiency of their operation. The ranger manages items and prepares for and takes expeditions to explore areas around the Mythwind Valley. During these expeditions, the ranger will deal with dangers. If successful, will hopefully find the benefits to help progress the town. The merchant buys and sells goods and tries to do this in the most profitable way. They can then use that profit to help increase resources. The merchant pays attention to the ever-shifting local market to know the best time to buy, best time to sell, and even when it makes sense to buy out their rivals' operations. As a bonus, I'll introduce the innkeeper here as well for those who are playing with the Expanded Horizons expansion. So the innkeeper is lower on the complexity scale, and their goal is to make sure guests have a good stay. The way the innkeeper does this is by meeting their requests with the right accommodations. If they provide good service, they increase their renown and attract more and more guests each day, meaning they earn more and more profit each day. Now that we're set up, let's take a look at the board for a minute to give you an overview of some of the things on it. So if we start in the upper left corner, we have our season tile that tracks the current season players are playing through. Seasons progress in this game from spring to summer to fall to winter and continue to loop back through the sequence. So below this is our resource tracker. And one thing I'll note with resources is that these get shared by all players. Resources are something you'll be working as a group to accumulate to pay the cost for things like new buildings. The resources from left to right are income, production, food, and culture. Resources start at 1, and you can't earn more than 10 or lose less than 0. The 12 location spaces with forest tiles on them are where you and the other players build your town. If there is a forest tile that covers the space, that must first be removed before you can build there. On the right-hand side of the board is your construction queue. A building under construction starts in one of these 4 slots and progresses up this track when a construction queue effect occurs throughout the game. When a building is in the topmost space and advances again, it typically gets placed in a cleared space on the board. These are the 4 available town action spaces and the building called the Longhouse, which is already built at the start of the game. Down by the tower, we have our 2 workers for hire, which are represented by dice in Mythwind. The blue dice are sprite workers, and the orange dice are villager workers that your character can hire to help you accomplish your goals more quickly. Unlike resources, coins and workers are assets that belong to individual characters and can't be traded or given to other characters throughout the game. Alright, so a game of Mythwind is played over multiple seasons, and each season is divided into multiple days. And by the way, days are equal to the number of weather cards in this deck, since 1 is drawn each day. Each day is then divided up into 3 game phases: dawn, daytime, and dusk, which we'll cover in greater detail next. At the end of a day, when there are no more weather cards left in the weather deck, there's a short end of season phase that takes place, and then players move to the next season or can save their game. Again, since there's no defined endpoint in this game, players can continue to play as many seasons as they wish at their own pace. Players can save their progress at the end of any season and then resume the game starting the next season for their next session. We're going to look at all of that later in the video. As your group starts a season, all players should note the goal listed on the goal card and not lose track of that. At the end of the season, your group will be rewarded if you meet this goal or penalized if you don't. These goal markers get used to keep track of objectives on the goal. For instance, this goal says each character must go on one adventure. So you'd place one of these markers on the card after each player completes the adventure action. The 3 phases of the game, dawn, daytime, and dusk, have actions that all players do the same that are covered in depth in this video. There are also actions that are unique to each character that can happen in each phase of the game that we won't go into this video, but we'll cover in the separate character videos. To find these videos, see the links in the description. Each day in Mythwind starts with the dawn phase. This phase determines weather for the day, determines if a season effect from a season tile gets resolved, and resolves any weather effect icon if shown on the weather card. Now, one thing to keep in mind is certain characters like the merchant, for example, has a unique step that only they perform during this phase. We'll cover any character-specific dawn phase activities in the separate character videos. As a group, you start the dawn phase by flipping over the top weather card and then place it next to the board. You'll stack these cards like this as days go by to leave the weather icon revealed at the top. Now for your first 2 days, you'll skip this part, but for day 3 and beyond, you'll look at the last 3 weather icons and compare them to the season tile. If your weather icons match one of the patterns on the season tile, then you resolve the season effect at the bottom of the matching pattern. The season effect will have you do things like move a resource up or down on the track, or possibly adjust the value of a worker die up or down. In this example, we need to decrease food by 1 since it's rained for the last 3 days straight, which is a bummer. So we decrease the food icon by 1. After you check for the season effect, then you resolve the weather effect icons, if any, that are shown on the card. The 2 weather effect icons that you'll find on these is the event card icon or advancing the building queue icon. If an event card icon is shown, then an event card is drawn, read aloud, and all players resolve it together. If the icon for advancing the construction queue is shown, then you move each building card in the construction queue forward 1 space, which I'll talk about more later. If no weather effect is shown, then there's nothing to resolve and you move to the next phase. By the way, many event cards state which cards to shuffle in the event deck next, but if at any time players are confused about which cards should come out next, or if they have run out of cards, there's a handy event card tree toward the back of the Town Charter rulebook. Now again, certain characters have unique things that only they will do in this phase, and we'll cover that in the separate character video. But if a character like the merchant is finishing their unique dawn steps, wait for those to complete before moving on to the next phase. The daytime phase is where most of the action of this game takes place. During this phase, each character selects and takes 1 town action, followed by their character actions, and finally they take any number of worker actions they might have available. We'll cover the town actions in this video since they apply to all characters. However, the details of the character and worker actions for each character get covered in their specific videos. By the way, during this phase, players will take their actions simultaneously, but they will need to communicate with other characters on strategy and a bit on who will do what, since only 1 character can occupy a town action space per day. Like I said, this phase starts with each player taking 1 of the 5 available town actions. To select a town action, a player places their character's mini on the action space, unless of course it's already occupied by another character. This is why communication alignment between players is important. It's also critical because your group can activate town actions in the order of your choosing, and you may want to see what the results of one action is before the next player chooses their town action. The available town actions are Adventure, Improve Town, Discover Land, Construct or Demolish, Hire, or Use a Building. One exception to one character per town action space is the Longhouse building. I'll point this out a little bit more when we get to the Use a Building action. The Adventure action gives a player a chance to explore and hopefully find resources and other things that may help you and your group reach your building goals. To take this action, you place your character's mini on the Adventure action space, draw the top card from the Adventure deck, read only the front of this card, and then flip the card over to resolve the back. On some cards, you're going to be asked to make a choice. Once you make your choice, you'll flip the card over and then read and resolve only the section that applies to the choice you made. Once resolved, the Adventure card gets removed from the game unless the card says otherwise. When you select the Improve Town, Discover Land action, place your mini on the action space and then choose which part of the action you want to do. Improve the town or discover land. You can't do both. If you select to improve the town, you can spend your coins to buy any combination and as many resources as you want or can afford for the town, based on the rates noted at the top of your character's player board. And you'll notice each character has different rates. For example, if the farmer takes this action, they could spend 20 coins and increase food by 2 and increase production by 1. Now, if you take this action and choose the Discover Land action, you pay 5 coins to the supply and remove one of the forest cards on the board. Once removed, flip the card over and collect any rewards stated on the back of the card, and then put the card back in the box. Once a location's cleared, players are allowed to place a newly constructed building on this space. For the Construct Demolish action, you place your mini on the action space and choose whether you will construct a new building or demolish an existing one. Again, you can't do both. To construct a building, you select one building card from the stack where you can meet the building's prerequisite, as noted under the title, and pay the resource to place it. The building prerequisite requires that the building noted must already exist uncovered in one of the 13 locations on the town board. If you meet the prerequisite, you pay the resource cost, which aligns to your player count, and then add the card to the construction queue slot as noted by the number next to this icon. As an example, we'll play the general store, and we can start construction on this building because we meet the prerequisite since the longhouse is already built. Next, we pay the cost which aligns with your group's player count. For our 2-player game, we will need to pay 2 income, 1 production, and 1 food. So we decrease those resources accordingly on our town board. And then lastly, we add the building card to the construction queue in the slot as noted. In our case, slot number 1. Now, if this space were already occupied, then we would place it in the next available space below this. If no spaces were available in the construction queue, then we couldn't play the card. If the prerequisite has this replace icon, then that means this building must replace the prerequisite building when it is added to the town. Let's say later in the game I have the lumber yard built and want to build the lumber mill. When the lumber mill gets placed in the town, it replaces the lumber yard. The building that gets replaced, the lumber yard in this case, goes back in the building stack and can be built later again. Something I think is important to know here is that the construction queue typically advances during the dawn phase of the game, and that comes from your weather effect on the drawn weather card. But it can also trigger at other times in the game as well. When the construction queue triggers, all cards in the queue are moved up 1 space in the queue. If the building in the top construction queue, space number 1, advances, you can choose any clear building location, place the building, and gain the reward as shown at the bottom of the building card. So when the general store advances and gets placed in an empty town space, we gain either a food or culture, and then add 1 blue sprite worker die to the tower. For a list of what these icons mean, there's a handy icon list on the back cover of the Town Charter rulebook. You can use this as a reference. I also recommend using the building tree in the Town Charter rulebook. It provides a great understanding of the building sequence to meet your prerequisites. So now that we know how to construct a building, now let's look at demolish. If you choose to demolish a building, you simply remove any one building from the board and put the card back in the building stack. The hire action allows you to hire the blue sprite workers and/or the orange villager workers, which are the dice that are available at the tower, and then you add them to your character's player board. Workers you hire allow your character to do more and more with the worker action part of the day phase. And again, we'll cover worker actions in greater detail in the character-specific videos. To hire, you spend either 2 coins to hire 1 available worker from the tower space, or spend 5 coins to hire 2 available workers from this space. When you hire workers, you pay the cost and then take either 1 or 2, either the same or a combination of colors, from the tower and transfer them to your dice well on your character's player board without changing their facing. And finally, we'll look at how to take a use a building action. You start the game with 1 building action available at the Longhouse, but as you build more buildings and expand your town, you'll add many new and beneficial use a building actions that players can take for their town action. A couple things to note with the use a building action. Similar to other town actions, if another character's mini occupies a building other than the Longhouse, you won't be able to take that building action. So remember, make sure you communicate with your groups so you don't get blocked from something you really want or really need to do for that turn. Also, not all buildings are available as a town action. In order to use a building as a town action, it must have this icon in the upper right corner, like the Longhouse does. So for a use a building example, if I choose to take the use a building action at the Longhouse, I place my character's mini there, and then I can either collect 1 coin, or this icon means I can gain a character skill on my character's board. If I choose to gain a skill, I pay the cost for that skill and add it to my character board in one of these spaces. Each character has different skills and different costs for these skills, which we look at closer in the separate character videos. Some other use a building actions have you pay a cost to gain benefits. Let's say I have my lumberyard built and use that for my town action. To do this, I decrease a hired villager value and spend 4 coins to gain 1 production. You'll find a list of the costs and benefits of all buildings in the building appendix of the rulebook. By the way, throughout the game you may see this up or down arrow next to a worker icon. When you see this icon with the hand, it means you either increase or decrease the value of one of your hired dice at your character board. To do this, you increase or decrease the value as shown on the die. Now, if you see this icon, it means you increase or decrease one of the worker dice at the tower, depending on if the arrow is pointing up or down. So, just as a reminder, during the daytime phase, players take 1 town action, their character action, and then any number of worker actions. Now that we've covered all of the town actions, let's look at character actions briefly. Character actions are unique to each character, and like I said earlier in this video, they're covered in detail in each one of the character-specific videos. One thing to note on character actions that apply to all players is the character action you take for the turn is limited by the town action you just finished. Town actions are either aligned with sprites, as indicated by this blue icon, or villagers, indicated by this orange icon, and sometimes you have the option to choose which one you're aligned with. We're going to look at those more in a minute. A couple things that you'll have to note is that for the hire action, your alignment matches the color of the worker die or dice you hire. So if I hire 2 blue sprite worker dice, then I will align with sprites for the turn. If you hire both a sprite and a villager, then you can choose your alignment. Something to note for the adventure action is your alignment depends on the card and is shown on the card back. On some cards where you have a choice, the alignment is shown next to the outcome of your choice on the back of the card. Again, the alignment is important because it will limit your options for your character-specific action. We cover character actions in detail in the character-specific videos. So the last part of the daytime phase is where characters take their worker actions. Worker actions are character specific, and again, we cover these in the character videos as well, but the workers you hire are stored in your dice well on your player tray. When you take a worker action, you move a worker from the dice well on your player board, decrease its value by 1, and place it in an action slot which corresponds to the type of worker it is, and then take that action. One thing to point out is that only one die can occupy a space. So when you use another worker, you must select and use another location which aligns with that worker. Once the die is placed, you trigger that action and gain the benefit. Again, we'll cover these in the character-specific videos. One additional thing I'll point out is that while your character action is limited by the alignment of your town action, this alignment does not affect your worker actions. You can use all of your workers if you're able to each turn. Your workers are just limited to the actions matching their type. So now that we've looked at dawn and daytime, we just need to cover the dusk phase. Dusk is where you return characters to your player board. You return worker dice with pips remaining from the spaces on your player board and main board back to the dice well without changing their facing. And then you re-roll any dice with no pips on them and return them to the tower space on the main board. Make sure to re-roll any 0 results. Some characters have specific things that only they will do during the dusk phase, such as the farmer replenishing their market. After all these things are done and any character-specific dusk phase activity ends, you'll start the next day, but only if there's another weather card to draw. If there are no more weather cards to draw, then you perform a few end-of-season steps as follows. You first look for any end-of-season icons that look like this and resolve them. For example, if you have the chapel in play, you gain 1 culture at the end of each season. Use the building appendix in the Town Charter rulebook to get more detail on building actions. Next, check and resolve your goal card. If your group met the goal, then flip the card over and read through the top part of the card and gain any reward listed, then remove the card from the game. If there was a failure, you would suffer any penalty and then place the card back in the goal deck. After you place it in the goal deck, then you shuffle the deck, draw 2 cards, and place the card you select on top of the deck, and shuffle the other back into the deck. Gather up all the weather cards from the table, shuffle these and place them in the tray. Change the season tile. In our case, we'll change this from spring to summer. If this were already on summer, then you would change to fall. Fall would change to winter, and then winter changes back to spring. The end of season is a place where you have the opportunity to either save the game or continue. So if you continue, you can dive right on back in there and play another season. But before starting the next season, you do have the option to choose another character to play. If you choose to save your game and play again at a later time, move the worker dice at the tower to the unlock side of the dice storage in the tray without changing the dice values facing. If you use the premium resource tokens, replace these with the standard ones, and then stack all 3 town boards on top of the game tray, place the cover over the top tray, and put them back in the box. Saving each character in this game is similar, but we'll cover saving each character in their specific videos. To resume play, just do these things in reverse order. Just remember, when you resume, you also have the option to start as a new or previously used character. Alright, we've made it through all the rules that all players need to know. So I hope by now you've decided which character you're going to play, because it's time to jump into your character's specific video. All links for those are posted down in the description. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed this How to Play Teach for Mythwind, and if you did, please remember to like and subscribe, and hope to see you in your character's video.